Welcome back. Section 2 of episode 15 with Tom Crate. I don't know what happens. It cuts out sometimes for some fucking reason, so yeah, you roll with the punches. Let's wait for everyone to jump back on. Pivotal point. Lost you, yes. Yep, jump back on. Hey. Back on. Yeah, I don't know why it does that, Tom. It just, sometimes it cuts out. It's weird. Do you have that invite? Hey guys, thanks for jumping back on. So I don't know why it does this. Every now and again it just cuts out and it goes back to the screen where like the initial screen to actually go live and where you put in the bio link and the description. So I don't know why it does this, but it's happened a few times now. So another thing to figure out. Let's get Tom back in here and pick up where we left off. Hopefully that first video saved because there's some nuggets on there. We always get what we need. Hey.
Hey. Can you hear me?
Did you hear what I was just saying?
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. Like I jumped back on and I was watching the recording, and then so I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Okay. So the first bit did record though?
Cool. Okay, cool.
That bit recorded, that video? Yeah, cool. I don't know what it is. It's happened maybe 3 times now where just halfway through the video, it'll just shut out and go back to the screen where like I've got to put in the description of actually starting to go live. So I've just gone back and I'll just press start again. If anyone's got has experienced that before, hit us up with a comment, let me know what the fuck is going on there. But yeah, I don't know. So anywho, rudely interrupted by Facebook. Where were we?
Yeah, I think I was just kind of making a distinction, like for me, like in my relationship to stress, that it's not necessarily just about working too hard. I mean, I think that's the sort of the general association. People are like, oh, you work too hard, you get stressed. For me, it wasn't so much. I mean, obviously, like working too much of anything is not, it's not healthy generally. But I think what really did the damage to me, something that I sort of I recognized and realized through the process, was the way I was treating myself, like internally, and I actually wasn't aware of, as I mentioned before, I've been sort of meditating and sort of getting into certain, self-development things for a number of years. But one thing that became apparent to me during that process was um, how sort of harsh I was speaking to myself, and how much I was just sort of, I mean, for want of a better expression, I was really being kind of violent towards myself. Not necessarily like physically hitting myself, but internally, I was creating a lot of, and it's not, it's makes total sense to me that one of the first symptoms I experienced, physical symptoms, was like stomach pain, because that's where I hold a lot of, when I feel tension, and if I don't, I don't express that. It's like you're, rather than, if you have this sort of this adrenaline, these stress hormones, which are obviously designed to be, for you to use your body and express it, so so I would be just pushing it down, and then I'd just be holding on to these feelings, which were ultimately tied up in, my stuff everywhere. We all have stuff, right? We all have things from our past, certain patterns, certain conditioned behavior, things that trigger us. And for me, what I recognized was that I was just really, one of my you still there, Matty? I'll keep
Yeah,
going anyway.
sorry.
Yes, I just looked and there was like an empty chair. I was like, what?
Technical difficulty.
Is the interview over? No worries. But
Can I just quickly on that? Can I just ask you, if someone's watching, can they make sure that they can see us okay and we're coming through all right as well? Because I just had a comment before saying that it was still frozen, so I just want to double check that you guys that are watching can see us clearly and hear us clearly. Can someone just give me a thumbs up or a yes or a no, if that is the case, for those who are watching? That'll be good. There's people still coming on, so all good. All right, cool. Thanks, Bertie. You. Hey, Madonna. Hey, guys. Legend.
Sweet.
Cool. So yeah.
So the thing, I mean, the thing for me, and this is obviously is very personal to me, but something that's tied up in my, you know, I do animation design, this kind of work that's very, although we work in teams, but a lot of the work is quite solitary, and you're working on a computer, but you're also working towards a sort of a piece of work that you then want to show to the world, right? You're showing it to the client, and there's a lot of expectation around that, you know, how it turns out, the sort of the result of your work. And for me, what I became aware of, or like acutely aware of, you know, through this process, was that I was really, a lot of my self-worth was tied up in my success in terms of my work. You know, like I needed this thing to be good to get people's approval,
Yeah.
in order to feel good about myself, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, so it came, so a lot, you know, I think a lot of, I believe that the main cause of my experience was the fact that I basically, you know, I didn't appreciate myself enough. I didn't feel like I was good enough as I was, and that I had to justify, you know, I had to justify my existence, or you know, make myself feel worthy. The only way I could do that was by doing a good, you know, doing something beautiful, and then by extension say, oh, look, I've done this beautiful thing, I've worked on this beautiful thing, therefore, you know, that means I'm a good person, right? You know, like pat me on the head, tell me I'm good enough, right? And so I became, yeah, and ultimately that was the thing that drove me, sort of drove myself into the ground. You know, I mean, I could talk about the external circumstances, you know, like clients making demands and all these kind of things, but ultimately, I think that's an important thing. You know, it's an important thing to remember in any kind of stressful situation, that you're complicit in everything, right? Unless someone has a gun to your head, you know, you're really not. There's a certain level of agreement, right? Like I wasn't being forced to do this stuff. Like I agreed to do this work, ultimately it was me that was putting the pressure on myself to perform. It was me that was telling myself that I had to keep working, that I had to work late, and all of these things, and it wasn't necessarily true at all, you know. And
So can
you know,
I
quite
ask?
sure.
That's you now speaking in hindsight, but in the moment, did you find that you had a lot of blame, and you didn't recognize this in the moment, or were you aware the whole time that this was going on? Or can you sort of take me back to your mindset in the moment?
There was definitely a certain level of resentment, I think. Like whenever like new requests would come in, I would feel a bit of resentment about, it's like, oh, but I've already done, you know, what they want me to do this and they want me to do that. Um, but also, you know, I could also say that I was very quick to agree to things too. Like I also didn't stand up for myself, or just tell it like it was and say like, okay, I don't have time to do that. Instead, I was just saying, okay, you know, because that was my own need for approval. That was again like taking that, you know, taking it onto myself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, in terms of, yeah, I think there was definitely some of that, you know. There was some of that. Um, I've forgotten what I had something else I was going to say, but I lost my train of thought there.
It'll come back. I was going to ask
Mm.
about the like the threshold or turning point to becoming self-aware, but I feel like you're going to get there along the journey as well. So I'll just let you sort of continue organically with sort of where you're at from that point.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so it was kind of interesting because um, a lot of this sort of processing that happened kind of after this project was finished. It was sort of like when I was in that project, I was just in complete sort of I guess I didn't really give myself much time to think or process things. I was so focused on sort of finishing this project that I was just kind of like or almost became like a machine, I guess. And then it wasn't until afterwards that I really started to process these things. Um, and I guess one of the really interesting things, which was like a really powerful lesson for me, was I sort of had this kind of a constant sort of discomfort, in my gut area, and I noticed that every time that I had any kind of a thought that was, you know, a sort of basically a resistance, right? If I resisted anything that was happening, that was the thing I wanted to talk about actually, was resistance. So anytime that something happened, that like someone would say something, or something would happen that I was resisting, like I don't want that to happen, or I felt some kind of um, um, I guess like a stress response. I would immediately have like a very clear kind of, I could almost feel it like a jolt in my gut, right? So it was kind of, in a way, it was like this sort of cognitive behavioral training, right? That I was getting this. It was like teaching me that, oh, if I resist what's happening, I'm hurting myself, which is what's happening all the time, right? But usually we don't get that direct feedback, so we just keep on doing it. Um, but that
Yeah.
was that was sort of the sort of this other key factor, I guess, that I was going to talk about is, um, you know, the just resisting the situation. I think, if, like I was saying, you can do it, if you can work a lot and not necessarily be stressed. I feel like when the sort of the damaging sort of uh, experience comes in, is when you're working a lot, but you're also resisting what's happening. Like I was resisting, I was always resisting the fact that I don't have enough time, and it's not good enough. So it doesn't matter what I did, I was under this constant feeling of pressure. Um,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
wanting to change the situation all the time. Um,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
so like that was one of the first big things uh, that really sort of clicked for me, is just to learning to accept that, things are outside of my control, and
Mm.
it's my response to what's happening that's really creating my experience, and ultimately creating my
Yeah.
my health, or lack of, is sort of
Yeah.
directly related to how am I experiencing my reality. Am I saying yes to what's happening, or am I saying no, hell no, like this isn't right, this can't be right, it's not good enough. All of these things are putting yourself in a constant state of, you can't relax like that, right? You can't
Resistance.
relax. Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
relax if you feel like things aren't right. Um,
Yeah.
it's like,
There's a couple of
um,
questions, Tom. I think you sort of answered them already, but was it a need for approval, or simply trying to be a great get at customer service and delivery, or maybe setting and maintaining your standards, meeting
um,
overachieving standards can be super stressful. Yeah. So thanks, Madonna.
mm, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I would say like that they, but the second two still kind of fall into the category of wanting approval. Like if you really go deep into it, like why am I doing this? I think it's a really, really, powerful question to ask, in any situation, is why am I doing this? And yes, I could say that, I wanted to, um, I was hard on myself because I wanted to advance my career, right? I wanted to take a step up the ladder. I wanted to make a reputation for myself so that I could then do, more exciting jobs in the future. Maybe improve my salary, all of those things. But I think all of that stuff really, if I sort of go below the surface, the thing that was really driving me, and is also probably driving those things.
Fuck. He'll be back. Tom, what happened then, man? Hit me up. Hey guys, hey Julie. It's the retrograde. There's a retrograde going on. Retrograde of fucking one of the planets, and it's messing with all of our technology. So, Tom, you might need to get out of the video, bro, and jump back in, and then I'll invite you back again because I can't invite you at the moment. Oh yes, I can. Boom. There we go. Fucking retrograde.
Boom.
It's the retrograde, bro. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's the moon. It's always the moon.
The fucking moon.
Fucking moon. Anyway, yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, no, I would say, like, if you're talking about, okay, I want to advance my career, right? I want to make more money or something. But why do I want that? Right? You can always ask that question. Why do I want this? Why am I doing it? There's always a reason below that, why do I want more money? Why do I want to advance my career?
Yeah.
For me, and it's maybe, that's also me, like, personally, because of my sort of my stuff, my conditioning. That's one of my sort of one of the things that drives a lot of my behavior is this sort of seeking approval. For other people, it might be, obviously everyone's different, but by asking that question, why am I doing it, but not just stopping there, keep asking it.
Why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Ripping down the layers.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's also, having made all of these discoveries, it doesn't mean I'm not free of that either. It still drives me, but the key thing is having awareness of it. The more awareness you can have of it, the more you can make conscious decisions around it. So I can be aware of the fact that, when I take a job, yes, I am still, I really want to do a great job, and I want people to, to like the work and stuff. But I can also be aware of where I'm crossing the line, or where I'm, am I sacrificing my health or my relationships or for that? And
Is that a
maybe that's
part of your
okay if it's
value
just a,
system then? Does that come down to where you where you hold things in line in your value system and being true to them?
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say I have a very, I don't have like a very clear set of values that I apply to everything, but I do try to appraise every, whatever situation I find myself in. I think as often as possible. I think you can never really do it enough. It just sort of take stock, and this is
Yeah.
again where taking some time out is really, really important. Just giving yourself 5 or 10 minutes a day, and just like taking stock of what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And what am I, everything involves a bit of compromise, right? When you work, you're not sacrificing, but you're sort of trading time or whatever it is for money. And it's fine as long as you're aware of that transaction that's taking place, right? But I think a lot of us, myself included, aren't always aware of some of the things that we're giving up in in exchange for the thing that we're going for. So the more aware you can be of that, then you can make much more conscious decisions. And yes, I have, I'm certainly not like, I haven't cut stress out of my life. Like I still have periods and times when, when I feel some of these feelings coming back. But I feel I'm better equipped now because I have this awareness that I can start to see when things are becoming a little bit, maybe things are starting to get a little bit too far out of balance, and then I get to sort of, make a conscious decision. Okay, maybe I need to dial this back a little bit. And I think that's something else that's really important is to sort of, that's why it's important to kind of be to do it on a regular basis, because the longer you leave your mind unquestioned, the more time it has to sort of build up like a really distorted view of reality. Like during that period of time when I was in that project, like for me, it was basically, failure in that project was kind of equivalent to death. Like it had the same, I would have this kind of, this icy
Yeah.
grip on my heart, right? When I thought about like
You're stressing
failing
out.
in that completely, yeah, like completely like, like it was just, it's just a commercial. It's just like it's a car commercial. There's like millions of those. It's just like
When you put it into
some stuff
perspective
moving
and
around on a
context, yeah.
screen. Exactly, but in that time at that time, that was like, oh my God, I'm
Everything.
gonna die if I don't do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, like, and it can, and even if you're not thinking that, like directly, but you're creating those, responses in your body, and if you're doing that
Yeah.
over a sustained period, that's like you're really you're poisoning yourself with, with all of these stress hormones and stuff, which are all,
Yeah.
um, they're all, I mean, this whole stress response is, it's a healthy thing, right? We're supposed to have it. It serves a purpose in certain situations, but it's not meant to be, we're not meant to be pumping out like huge amounts of adrenaline every day while we're sitting in front of a computer, right?
Yeah.
That's doing,
Unnatural.
yeah, you don't have to be a sort of a doctor or a scientist to know that that's like not, uh, it's not great for you, so eventually at some point it's, and I think it can also be, I think as it was before that happened, that I was sort of doing that on a much lower, a more subtle level, but I was still kind of damaging myself, because
Consistently
I
through
was
that.
I was sort of, yeah, I was sort of accepting a certain level of sort of
Yeah.
stress, or
Yeah.
I yeah, not that stress is a bad thing, but accepting like a kind of a, not really stress without releasing it, I guess, is the thing,
Yeah.
or without just kind of, um yeah, I feel like the whole, there is still kind of a, there's also a stigma around stress itself and the word, and thinking like
Mm.
stress is bad and all that, and I don't think that's the case. I think stress is a kind of, it's an important part of life, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
It's sort of, but it's
Do you think
about,
it's
it's
just
about
awareness?
using it, like,
Like
exactly,
you
yeah,
you
like you
lack
use.
awareness. Mm.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, because you stress when you work out, right? When you
Mm.
exercise, you're applying stress to your body, but you're doing it in a controlled way, which
Yeah.
allows your body and your muscles to grow. But you're not going, you don't go to the gym for like 24 hours straight and do bicep curls, because your arm's going
Yeah.
to drop off, right? But in
Yeah.
a way, that's kind of what we do in other situations in our life. That's basically what we're doing, right? We're
Mm.
just pushing and pushing and pushing, and
Yeah.
not giving ourselves the time to recover, which ultimately is, is extremely. We may think we're being productive in the
Unhealthy.
moment, but ultimately, it's, yeah, in the long run, it's not productive, because, um,
Yeah.
yeah, we're just going to fall apart, basically.
It leads me to a question as well. Are you familiar with Tony Robbins' six core needs, six driving needs?
Not off the top of my head, no.
So out of these four, which one sounds most pertinent for you? Certainty, variety, connection, or significance?
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, I mean, probably, if I'm being super honest, it's probably significance. It's probably like wanting to approve. I mean, I know connection is something is also like that I also kind of crave. I guess that,
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe because it's a bit of both. Like I just want people
We've
to
got
pat me
all
on
of
the head.
them.
Maybe that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got
Right.
aspects of
Okay.
all
So
of them.
which one is the most? Yeah. So in that case, probably significance, right? Like
Yeah.
like the thing that sort of gets me out of bed in the
Um,
morning is
yeah.
wanting to be appreciated by people, I guess.
Yeah. And so there are our physical needs that he points out, and there's two spiritual needs, which is growth and connection, which can only be met in resourceful ways. But those four that I mentioned, they can be met, and we meet them in either resourceful, neutral, or unresourceful ways. And a lot of the times when we don't even know this, but if you look back on your time, right, what you recognize and what I predict is that that significance you've been just, it's a need, it's a thirst and a hunger within us And so whether it's resourceful or unresourceful, if we're unconscious about it, we'll seek it and get it in either way. But as soon as you recognize that significance is like a driving need of yours, you can then you can pinpoint in your life where you're meeting it in unresourceful ways, and you can start eliminating them and start really creatively finding resourceful ways of filling that need and feeding that hunger. And it's yeah, it just came up for me when like listening to you, and I knew it would be significance as well. Because yeah, that need for acceptance, appreciation, the accolade as well, and you're very driven professionally as well. It's like you push hard, you're doing fucking really great work, but to get to that level of anxiety and stress, it's like, yeah, it's full on. And talk to me about how, I guess, the 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 curve and your incline, and what were some of the catalysts for change, and what was some of the first steps that you went through to recognize it, to things you implemented? Obviously you went on your holiday that completely shut things off. What was some of the sort of the pivotal recognizations and epiphanies that you found on that part and that journey?
Mm. Um, I guess it's a little bit difficult to remember specifics, like going back.
Mm.
Um, I mean I definitely remember like one of the key things that sort of penny dropping for me was this idea of self-love, which is something I'd never really paid attention to before, and I probably was even a little bit like triggered by even just the phrase self-love, you know, just that idea of self-love that's like selfish and you know, and so
That's not
just
manly.
really, yeah, exactly. Really diving into that, you know, like, um, you know, read a lot of books about that sort of subject, and actually, yeah, I think probably the one, if there was one book, I mean, I did a lot of over that period when I was sort of, you know, kind of just shutting down. I did a lot of processing, a lot of reading, but probably the first book that I read that really kind of flicked a switch in my head was called "Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It."
Oh,
Um,
well.
by I think it's Naval Ravikant. His name is. It's a. I really recommend that book to anybody. It's like a really quick read. And it's basically written by a guy who was like um, had a startup company in Silicon Valley, and you know was really successful. And then his company tanked, and he, you know, became suicidal, and sort of but sort of hit rock bottom, and then, you know, had this sort of realization that uh, that it's only him that can give himself, you know, his what he really wants, right? And then and so just doing things like telling yourself in the mirror, you know, I love you, and that kind of thing. And that book really, because I guess I could relate to his story, and
Mm.
then, you know, just made so much sense to me. Um, that and that was when I guess I started to realize um, how harshly I was treating myself. You know, how bad my self talk was, um,
Yeah.
or how sort of negative it was. You know, and so, you know,
Examples,
starting to
like
redress
things you
that
were saying to
balance.
yourself.
Um, like
Just so people can
like, you
relate.
know, just things like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I would often be saying like, you know, you stupid, you know, don't fuck it up. You're an idiot. You know, those kind of things would be, it would, you know, be just sort of happening. So oftentimes not even on a like a directly conscious level. Um, but
Mm.
yeah, you know, you're failing. You're not good enough. You're an imposter. Um, uh, you're yeah, you know, also the kind of stories like, you know, you're going to get found out, you know, you're way out of your depth, um, you know, you're fake, all of those kind of things,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then just being very, you know, anytime something didn't go exactly as planned, it would be like, you know, you fucked it up, you should have done it better, these kind of things, um,
It's
and
reaffirming all the shit thoughts every time something fucked up or didn't go the right way.
yeah, yeah, and but the funny thing is, you know, at that time I probably would have recognized, you know, occasionally where it would get a bit like uh I'd be like, oh, I need to, well, I'd calm down. I don't need to like sort of get really angry at myself, but but most of it was just sort of under the radar. I think it was just like normal. This is just normal. It's just like this is how I motivate myself as well.
Got a
Um,
comment here, bro.
which I also
From
recognize.
just quickly got a comment from Simon. One thing I learned over this is Simon Fidler. One thing I learned over the years, it's just advertising. It won't change the world. I remember how impressed I was Tom's creative output when we worked together on projects. I guess we always have pretty wrong perceptions of our own skills, especially when we are surrounded by other creatives. I often feel that I can only cover a very small part of a project while all others seem to have the full package. If you start to look closer, you recognize that everyone has his strengths and weaknesses. Keep it up, Tom. You rock. Great to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, fucking A. So I'm well done, and thanks for sharing, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. That's I'm really glad you're watching, man. Really appreciate that.
And g'day, guys.
Yeah,
Melissa, everybody else who's on as well. Chuck in your comments. If you got any questions for Tom, or if you're experiencing something similar, or you know someone that is, yeah, chuck us comment. Any questions as well. There's obviously, yeah, we've both been through our anxieties and stresses, and we know that we're not alone. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's that's one thing that has really also become very clear to me. Like since having that experience and opening up a bit about it, and talking to other people, in other colleagues and other people in my industry, is that uh, everyone can relate in some way to to that. And and one of the things that probably contributed to my uh to having such a harsh experience was also the idea that, which also goes into that kind of negative self-talk, is like, oh, you're weak, you can't handle, all you're doing is sitting in front of a computer. Like, how can you can't handle that, and it's somehow weak to be to not be able to deal with situations. If I get stressed, if I get anxious, then there's something wrong with me as well, which is just another layer. It's just adding another layer of like pressure onto yourself, right?
yeah,
And
definitely.
I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that still think that, they look, because you look around. I think we mentioned this last time, right? You look around, and everyone else seems to be doing fine. And
Everyone's got their shit together.
when you're yeah, exactly. Especially when you're going through a tough time. And so you kind of, the default response is to just sort of act like everything's fine. And that can also be something else, and that's something that is another really been another key factor for me in dealing with this stuff, is being a lot more honest with myself, and then also with other people. And that's also something I'm still kind of learning to be better at, is saying, just being straight up and honest. Like, if I feel like I have too much to handle, if I feel like I'm struggling with something, is opening up to someone, even if it's just my wife or something. But ideally, I think the best thing is if you can have that relationship with your clients and with your colleagues. I think, in my experience, people are much more accepting and respectful of that than you think. Like, again, like the sort of the self-talk often says, oh, don't tell anybody that you're not doing fine, because that shows that you're not good enough, and you're weak, and all of this stuff. But I think it's really important to remember that we're all human, and we all have experienced these kind of feelings in some shape or form, and most people are respectful of that. And generally, I think probably the people that would be less likely to accept it are probably the ones that are in the deep shit themselves, um, which can be the case also. But it's just, yeah, it's another. I think another important factor, I think, in unlocking this stuff, to stop it from being just pushed down where it can really do the damage, is just expressing it,
Yeah.
sharing how you're
Mm.
feeling with people, or even just sharing it, just writing a journal or something like that, has also been really, powerful for me.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
so yeah,
It's full on.
I can't remember. I completely forgotten if there were the question, Simon. Like,
No,
I
it's just some good
a lot of
love.
stuff came up, but is that okay? Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks,
So
Simon. It's great to hear from you.
Yeah. Um, so there's obviously a lot of people that stressed out every day, and a lot of people I speak to who just get really overwhelmed with it. And you started talking then a little bit about the strategies that you use, but can you go into a bit more detail about sort of, yeah, your processes and your mindset now and the things that really you use to master that? Because you look like you're fit as a fiddle, you're in a good bit of health. Yeah, your mindset's solid. Obviously, we went through that King program together, and that just opened up a whole new can of worms and exposed us to a whole new level of mindset and understanding. So, yeah, can you sort of share a bit of that with guys that might be watching who, yeah, need something like this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, like as you know, like as you mentioned, like through, I'm not I'm not like it's not like I'm fixed now, if you know what I mean. Like I don't have all the answers, but I definitely do have certain strategies that I've sort of learned that that work for me. Um, there was at one stage when I sort of was very sick that I basically considered taking a completely different career path and just leaving it behind because I could see that the damage that I'd done to myself. Do I really want to go back into that? But I made a conscious decision that I still love what I do, and I also believe that it's possible to do the kind of work that I do uh, without all of that. I think stress is always going to be there on some level because it's also I would I think there's a certain point where stress is uh, excitement at the same time, right? You want a certain level of excitement and a certain level of at times discomfort. Sometimes you need to get uncomfortable in order to grow.
Absolutely.
So I think all of those are important
Absolutely.
distinctions to make. I think that you don't want to
Yeah.
just avoid stress, like, but you do need to be aware, or it's very important to be aware of when the stress is kind of owning you and when it's causing, a lot of damage. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I shared a couple of things on that program, like you mentioned, where I was going through I went through some fairly intense experiences relating to work then as well, which were, uh, but much more. I think that the big difference there was the fact that I was really recognizing it when it happened, like in a sort of
You know,
specific
space to open up as well.
instance. Yeah, and just
Yeah.
recognizing, okay, that there's a lot going on here. Like, what action can I take right now? So, I mean, what
Mm.
in the specific case of like having anxiety in the moment, where um,
Mm.
like the pulse is racing and you just sort of I've had experiences at times where I just kind of feel like I'm just kind of like I don't know, feel like I'm going to explode or something. The blood pressure's going up and the heart is racing and the breathing gets tight. So the first
Mm.
thing is like, okay, most important thing is to kind of remove yourself from that situation that's causing that. If that, that's the, or whatever you can. If you can't remove yourself, then just remembering to breathe. That's like probably the best tip that I could ever give to anybody is just breathe. It's like the simplest thing you
Deeply,
can do. And
deeply and slowly.
like, it's just so, I mean, it's really, it's so closely linked to your mental state, like just breathing deeply. It's completely, it's proven with so much evidence that just having a few deep breaths can do wonders, like
So with
so
on the
breathing
breath,
is the
just quickly on the breath, this is something that like Navy SEALs and extreme sort of people that are in the armies that they practice this deep breathing because when they're in the heat of the battle, they got bullets flying around them. It's how they keep themselves so calm and how they keep themselves
mm,
composed is just focusing on their breathing, really deep and slow breathing. Um, it, it it affects the whole nervous system, affects the whole body, and so
mm.
yeah, I completely agree. Breathing's massive. Mm.
Yeah, totally. And it's also helping to bring you back into into connection with the physical world, right? Because also I think when we're experiencing that anxiety, it's usually because we're up here somewhere, we're thinking about the future, or we're thinking about concepts, we're thinking about what people are thinking about us, we're thinking about things that are going wrong, but none of that stuff is actually real in the moment. So it's like breathing and then just, because just getting in touch with, if you're sitting on, like what's the sensation of you sitting on the chair, or you know the air on your face, or whatever, anything that's just sort of bringing you back into, just pull you down from that sort of whatever that illusion is. Essentially, it's just an illusion. It's none of it is real. All that stuff that you're getting anxious about, it's not. So just come back to reality, and then the next thing would be to just remove yourself from the situation. So if I had a moment where I got particularly stressed, then maybe I would either go outside for a walk, or even just go to the toilet. Just lock myself in the toilet and take a few deep breaths and just kind of come down. Just come back to reality, right? Like, just recognize that these are all thoughts, and just try and, as much as possible, just ground it.
When you say
And then
reality,
on top of,
yeah, when you say reality, I feel like for me, it's coming back to the present moment and just being right here, right now. Yeah, being really present, not freaking out about what's going on in the past, what you might have fucked up, or what you think might fuck up in the future, or things that you're stressing about in the future, but just coming back into the present. You're alive, you're breathing, you're probably going to wake up tomorrow, have another day, everything's all good. Just breathe and be present.
exactly, right? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's another thing, right? Like, that's another more of a sort of a preventative measure or something, I suppose. Like, a good practice to get into is also, it's like gratitude, right? Like you say, like, we have so much. Really, just being alive is it's a good reason to be happy, right? Everything else is really a bonus if you really think about it, and you can
100
train
trillion
yourself.
chances
You
to
can
win.
train. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can really train your mind to be a lot more positive in that way, just by spending a couple of minutes every day writing down 3 things you're grateful for. That's a really powerful exercise too.
And surround yourself with
And
positive
then,
people as well.
yeah, I mean, there's so many things in that regard. Um, just yeah, which we're just kind of shifting those habitual patterns, because also it's about um, you know when I was feeling the most effects of the stress, I'd actually been developing habits of habits of attacking myself, habits of uh, things that weren't helping, habits of negative thought, habits of thinking, and it doesn't matter what happened, that my habitual response was, oh, it's not good enough. So those things are purely habits. They're not, there's nothing,
No,
it's
true.
nothing about you, or yeah, it's just a pattern, that, and you can change that with conscious uh, exercises and behaviors and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
another thing that's been really useful for me is some of the stuff that we worked on during the King program is also, I think maybe this applies to men more than women, but I don't know. But giving some form of expression to your stress. I mean, anger. In a way, it's like, I think for a lot
Are
of
you going to
men,
do a primal scream
that
right now?
a lot of that. Probably not right now, but I'll explain it. I'll explain it for the folks so they can do it in their own time. Um, but yeah, the primal
No
scream
pressure.
is a it's like, it's one step for me to do a live on Facebook doing a primal scream on it. Maybe we'll save that for like next week or something. I think I need to build up to
I
that.
did one in the bush the other day
But
when I went for a walk. It feels so good.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing thing, right? Like, and for
Yeah.
people that don't know what we're talking about, like, it's an exercise where you're just it's a primal scream. You're basically just screaming your lungs out, and it's a very, very cathartic thing to do, because we just don't get the opportunity to do that in us. It's just not socially acceptable, right? So I think we all carry around a lot of stuff that really doesn't need to be there, and could quite easily be, just gotten rid of, just by
I feel like
doing
you need to do
something
one to show
like,
them
what
we're
I
talking about.
I mean, I live in an apartment building, so I'm usually quite, like, the walls aren't very thick. So what I usually do is I'll grab a bunch of pillows when I need to do one. I'll just grab a bunch of pillows and I'll just scream into that. Um, and it's like, yeah, you just kind of, I just keep going until you just, there's a certain point where you just feel like it's a kind of a nice
So
relaxed feeling afterwards, right? Like it's just a really,
it
really,
releases
I mean,
all of it.
it's such, yeah, it's such a simple thing to do, really. I mean, like obviously there's um the factor of like what will people think or whatever, but I mean, you can go out to the forest, you can
Others
go,
bit.
you can scream at some pillows, like I do, or you can just fuck it and just go and scream out in the street if you want to, like,
I'll do one
um,
tomorrow for everyone on a go live. So I can just give an example for one tomorrow when I'm out the bush.
awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I'll hold you. I'll make sure you do that. Um, but yeah, that's a great one. Um, and like I mentioned meditation as well before, like that's another thing. It's really, even just like 5 minutes a day, I think makes a huge difference, because it's just something about, and I don't think it even matters what type of meditation you do, but there's something about just giving yourself a portion of time to do absolutely nothing, that
Yeah.
especially in, in the society we live in, where we're just constantly on our phones and all of that stuff, that we're like, how much time in the day do we spend with no input? It's really, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. We just wake up in the morning, we're just on social media, we're just getting so much input, and it's no wonder we have a lot of stuff going around in our brain, because we're just cramming stuff in there. So just giving yourself a, brief window during the day to just
Mm.
completely shut that down,
Yeah.
and just let things, and let things settle around. Also, journaling as well, I mentioned before, is a great way of like sort of filtering out, allowing some of these, just reflecting, and getting some clarity on, what your situation is. If you're feeling stressed about something, write about what's actually happening, because oftentimes the thing, when you start to really examine it, you see that there isn't really that much going on. Your mind is making it into a huge thing, but in reality, there's not really, there's nothing there. Ultimately, when you the more you dig, the more you find it's, there's ultimately underlying everything, there's just peace, right? And it's just sort of, digging through that. Um, so yeah, like,
You're chopping up.
sorry. Um, yeah, but I think that's one thing that I think a lot of us miss, is having some kind of ability to release physically. Can you hear me now,
Eternal
Matty?
robot.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
But
you're
yeah,
back.
like, cool. But yeah, like, if like just physical release, whatever way it is, I think that's something that we, a lot of us don't get enough of. Just some
Yeah,
way of releasing emotion. Um,
yeah,
Even, exercise is great as well, but it doesn't always get in that, like in the same way that a primal scream just kind of really digs in there, and helps you to
yeah,
get it out.
yeah.
So yeah, um, those are some things. And but yeah, and ultimately, like, so having some practices like that, and being consistent with them, and most importantly is when you really feel that, like, for me, when the times when I do get stressed, or I feel like things are getting, a bit on top of me, that's when that's when I double down on my meditation. That's when I double down on all those other things, because I know that it's super important. It's way more important than, and it's actually, I've also experienced it in my life, that it's actually helps me to do better work, more effective and more productive, when I actually
Yeah,
put more time into not just going to work, but actually giving myself space, and giving myself,
absolutely.
a bit of time to reflect, and that kind of thing.
All boils down to self-love, is what I'm hearing. It all comes down to loving
Absolutely.
yourself. Time,
That
talking,
was.
everything.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't care who you are. Like, you don't love yourself enough. I think it's a chronic, uh, kind of sickness that we have in the world, that we are just, we don't we don't we don't realize how awesome we all are. We don't realize how, what every single person on this planet is a beautiful, you know wonder of nature. And how often do we really like understand that and experience that, and instead
Sure.
run around trying to get this thing or that thing that's going to make us better, or make us, we don't need to get better. We're perfect as we are, you know. So just remembering that is massive, massive, and you can't remind yourself or tell yourself that enough, as far as I'm concerned.
I can't think of a better way to end and a better note to end on, Tom. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or pass on before we head off? Because that was beautifully said.
Um, no, I think that's good. I mean, I think I really appreciate you
Yeah.
having me on this time. Like, I think it's really,
Can you?
I apologize for the beginning. Like, I feel like I it was actually a really good example of my some of the habitual patterns that come up. Like, when we started this call, I started getting nervous, and I started getting into my mind, and I felt like I was climbing up, and I was starting to think, oh, this is, you know, you're doing it wrong, and blah blah blah. Um, and but I recognized it, and I by communicating it, by sort of recognizing it and communicating it, then I was able to start getting back into into, you know, to ground myself. And that's kind of like that's kind of proof for me that the stuff that I'm talking about is, you know, it works for me. And you know, I think it should work for anybody. But yeah, like, I think, as we said, bottom line, um, appreciate yourself.
Boom. I love it. Thanks so much, brother, for hanging out and for, yeah, sharing your story, being open and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and be seen like that. Because I know there's a lot of people that are still struggling and that will be able to draw from your strength. So it's fucking awesome. And I just feel privileged to, yeah, that you feel comfortable enough jumping on with me and sharing it with me as well. So it's really awesome, man. I know that it's going to touch a lot of people and help a lot of people. Let's keep doing what you're doing, man. It's awesome to watch.
Thank you, brother. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure. Catch up soon. You have an awesome night. And thank you guys for everyone for joining and for listening. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. I know I did. Um, Reach out to Tom, connect with him, say good day, introduce yourself. If you've got any questions, he's more than happy to help out and have a chat as well. And me too, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, guys. Have an awesome night. Love you lots. See you, brother.